So my name is Joe McVeigh. I'm the president of the Ilsley Public Library Board of Trustees and a member of a group called the Ilsley 100 Project Team. And with me here today is Dana Hart, our library director, who'll be speaking a little bit later. But right now, I want to hand things off to another member of our project team, who is Jim Gish. And you might know Jim from his work as the town liaison on the rail bridge tunnel project. What you may not know is that Jim is a former president of the Board of Trustees of Ilsley Library and a member of the Vermont Libraries Council. So he's very involved, knowledgeable about libraries. So Jim, over to you.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate the introduction and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us here today at lunchtime. This is going to be a really exciting hour that we're going to spend together here. I think many of you, I love libraries. I grew up in libraries, and in particular, I have a real fondness for Ilsley Library. So today we're going to talk about the future of our library, and we're going to imagine what it might be in the future. Which I think is a wonderful thing. Libraries are places that fire our imaginations in all kinds of ways. So today you're going to join us on a little journey as we kind of take you behind the scenes and we take a look at what this Ilsley 100 team is imagining for the future of our library. I think you're going to find some of it, and I hope most of it, very exciting. So Ilsley, we're at a turning point right now, and as we approach the 100th birthday, Ilsley opened its doors in September 1924, and so we'll be probably putting in place a year's long worth of celebrations leading up to that September date. But it also means that we're dealing with a 100-year-old building, and much like the project that I worked on downtown, where we had two bridges on Merchants Row and Main Street that were 100 years old and starting to deteriorate significantly, which led to our rail tunnel project. We have a library that is showing its age. And so I'd like to walk you through kind of the needs part of the library, the kind of structural issues before we get into the kind of aspirational part of our program here. So let's look over at the infrastructure side of things. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped the gun here. First, I'm going to hand it off to Dana Hart, our library director, to give you a snapshot of where the library is right now, so some facts and figures, and then I'll be back to talk about the infrastructure side of things. Dana, over to you.
Thank you, Jim. So if you're here attending the meeting, I know there's a good chance you use the library, but it can still be really eye-opening, I think, to go through some of these figures and realize how much takes place here at the library. So these numbers are from our fiscal year 2022. We keep track of statistics from July 1st through the end of June. When we gave this presentation a few days ago in person, I gave out pins that said "I love Ilsley Library" to anyone that wanted to take a guess and sort of participate in this slide. So if anyone wants to guess any of these numbers by typing them in the chat, you can come by the library and get a pin at the front desk. We'll have those out all week next week. So the first number I'd like you to guess is the number of annual visits that we had here at the library. So how many people in and out of the door last year? And just go ahead and type it in the chat box if you'd like to participate. I'll give it a minute just to see if anyone wants to hazard a guess before we do the big reveal.
So Dana, what was the question again?
Number of annual visitors, so people that attended the library last year. Okay, I see a guess for 90,000.
Wow.
22,000. Okay, so the answer is 94,000. So Julie, that was a great guess, spot on. And this is actually a really low year for us. Pre-pandemic, we had about 170,000 people visiting the library each year. So that speaks to what an active and engaged community we have here. The next number I'd like you to guess is the number of card holders. So the number of people that have a library card. And remember, anyone can come in and use the library's resources, spaces. Anyone can come in and read a book. But to actually check a book out, you need a library card. So I see a couple people, Peggy's already guessing the number of card holders that we have at Ilsley. If anyone else just wants to go ahead and type that into the chat box. Okay. So the number of card holders we have is 3,700, so just about 4,000. And that works out to about 1 in every 2 Middlebury residents, so about half the population. That's a really high statistic. When you look at libraries across the country and across the state, we have a really high per capita engagement for library cards, so that's really exciting. Okay, go ahead and guess the number of items we checked out last year. Books, DVDs, this includes physical and digital materials, so ebooks, audiobooks. How many materials do you think the library checked out? Last year, we had about 122,000 items checked out. The majority of these were physical items, but we do have growing use of digital items. And again, this is a low number for us. Pre-pandemic, it was about 175,000 materials per year. If you think about the number of materials this is per day, based on that 122,000 number, that's 350 books in and out of the building every day. So we're busy, which is great. We like to be busy. We like when the books go out, and we like when they come back in so other people can check them out. And we're able to achieve all of this, of course, because we're open for about 2,800 hours per year. So moving on, we have a couple more numbers for you to guess if you would like. Number of community meetings that took place in the library. Go ahead and take a guess. Number of community groups that use the library to hold a meeting. Could be a local board that's holding a meeting. It could just be a tutor coming in to meet with a student. We have multiple public spaces that are available to reserve that groups make use of. Okay. Good guesses that I'm seeing here. So that number is 295. We had 295 public groups reserve space at the library. These are not library programs. These are, again, groups coming in and making use of the space. There aren't very many places in downtown Middlebury where you can go for free and hold a meeting, and there's a real use for it. So we're happy that we can meet that need in the community. All right. I see Julie says impressive numbers. Thank you. And thank you to all of you that help us generate those impressive numbers. We're happy when the library is of use. So library programs are the last thing we're going to talk about. You can go ahead and guess the number of children's programs we had last year. 143 library sponsored children's programs. So these run the gamut from recurring programs like story time, which supports early childhood literacy and numeracy and gives children and parents a chance to get together and socialize. And then we have really great one-off programs. We have a gingerbread making program coming up in December, and every year we have Happy New Year. That's where all the youngest residents in the town who don't get to stay up until midnight to celebrate the new year gather in our community meeting room and do a big countdown to noon. So that's really fun and always a good time. And I'm seeing Catherine is asking in the chat, do you have a number of how many children participated? We do have that number. I'm sad to say I don't have it in my head, but at the end of this, maybe I can go take a look at that statistic and get back to you, Catherine. And the last number is number of adult programs. If anyone wants to take a guess, they can put that in the chat. So I think maybe we're all guessed out. So I'll go ahead and share that we had almost 200 programs for adults last year, 199 adult programs. We run a huge range of programs. In general, programs at the library either teach people a new skill, provide an option to socialize and connect, provide an opportunity for recreation or cultural enrichment. So we try and have a large variety of programs. We have the First Wednesday lecture series. We have Youth Media Lab. This is really for teens, but teens consider themselves adults, so that's how we try and treat them here at the library. And this is a great program that we've run in conjunction with Kurt Broderson, the director of MCTV, Middlebury Community Television. They're a partner of ours, and Kurt teaches teens how to use recording equipment and make films. So we love offering all these programs to the community, and the reason we're able to offer them is because of the Friends of the Library. I want to thank all the friends of the library, especially if we have any attending here today. The Friends fund 100% of library programs. So the vast majority of library operations are paid for through the town, through taxes. But programs are different. Programs are funded by the Friends of the Library, and for that, we're very grateful. So thank you to those of you who participated in guessing some of these numbers. That was fun. So moving on, next I think we have back to the infrastructure issues with Jim.
Yeah, now we will talk about that. Boy, so here's my takeaway from those numbers. Ilsley is one busy place, right? And it's also kind of a centerpiece of our community life. You know, there's so much that happens in that library. So let's take a look at some of the structural issues that the library is dealing with right now, and we'll start with the boiler. And so we've got a 30-year-old boiler that's burning fuel, fuel oil as the heating the building. Now, the 30-year-old boiler is on the verge of needing to be replaced. So this presents an opportunity to, rather than replace the boiler and continue to burn fuel oil, is to invest in green technology. And that's going to be part of what we're looking at going forward. Looking at another issue here, we have the elevator. Anybody been stuck in that elevator before? Carol, I see you smiling. Maybe you've been. Oh yeah, I guess can we unmute Carol a second, or? Well, I'm going to take it, Carol, that you're muted right now, but maybe you can put in the chat that you had an event in the elevator. You wouldn't be the only one. And so, this needs to be replaced. It's on its last legs. Another issue here that we're dealing with is the front steps. Every time I walk by those front steps and see the kind of deteriorated concrete, I recognize that we need to do a better job of getting people into the library, particularly those that have accessibility, mobility challenges. Those front steps are a hike. The side entrance is a bit of a challenge too for people getting in and out. Moving along, well, this is not good. We all know that the children's room is located in the basement, right? And groundwater is leaking into that basement. So that's not a good situation. That needs to be addressed. Moving along, we'll look at another set of issues here. Air circulation. Now, this was interesting to me to learn about as I talked with Dana. In our home, we open the windows to get air circulating. And certainly the library can do that during the summer. When we get into winter months, you're not going to have a lot of open windows in the library. And what we learned during the pandemic was how important it is to keep fresh air in the library in order to maintain the health of the staff and library patrons as well. So the library really needs a good air circulation system. Anybody who's taken a peek behind the main desk there, had an opportunity to look behind the scenes at Ilsley, will kind of quickly come to realize that the staff are working in areas and they're doing their operational thing in spaces that weren't designed for that. It's very cramped. They're make-do spaces. Dana and her team have done a fabulous job of kind of making do, but it's not designed for an efficient and effective operation of our library. MCTV. MCTV is a critical piece of our community, and as many of you know, it's housed on the third floor there in kind of a cramped space. It also lacks a secondary egress. We've got one way of getting in and out, and that's not a particularly good thing. Now, this was interesting to me because I never considered it before, but as we're looking at how to, involve Ilsley, it was brought to my attention that some 40% of the building consists of unusable space. Well, what does that mean? We're talking about hallways, columns, low ceilings. As you walk around the building, there's a spaciousness to it that's kind of nice, but there's also a lot of kind of, I would say, wasted space that we could make better use of. And next time you're in the library, I think if you look around, you'll see what I mean there. And here's an important point too. You know, the two library bathrooms are located on the side of the building there, and right off the side entrance. And so, you know, library staff can't monitor who's kind of going in and out of using the library bathrooms, and that presents a safety issue for us. Okay, so those are some of the kind of the needs that the building as a physical building built in 1924, at least the center of it, is facing. So given the extent of those issues, the select board and the Ilsley Library Board of Trustees got together and formed what Joe mentioned earlier, what we're calling the Ilsley 100 project team to plan the library's future. Joe is president, and Amy, as a member of the Library Board of Trustees, are on that this project team. Dan Brown and Farhad Khan from the Middlebury Select Board are part of the team. Barbara Doyle Welch, many of you know, has brought the tremendous library expertise to our committee. Ruth Hardy, an advocate for the library, as you know, is our Vermont State Senator. Ken Perrine, the former president of the National Bank of Middlebury, is on the team. Judith Harris, who serves as liaison to the town manager, has a very important role, and that she is providing some of our kind of timeline and construction and engineering design expertise, an important member of the team. And then, of course, Dana, as the library director, is on this team. So I think we have got a very knowledgeable, a very passionate about library team here that's going to guide our library into the future.
So thanks, Jim, for giving us an overview of the team. And we've been working pretty carefully and intently for several months now. And we're really looking forward to sharing with you some of what we have come up with. But we want to know what you think as well. So as I said at the beginning of our time today, at any time during this presentation, you're more than welcome to enter into the chat your comments about what you think we might have gotten right, if there are things that are missing that you don't see. We're interested in knowing what you think is absolutely a must-have in the library. And after Dana and I have had a chance to share some of our vision with you, we're going to come back and ask you specifically to comment on some of these, what we've shown you. So please keep these questions in mind as we go ahead. Well, a number of months ago, the Ilsley Library trustees came together with a vision for what we'd like to see in a new building, a new Ilsley. And we came up with the following vision for the building. This is not quite the same as the mission statement of the library as an organization, but it's more what we'd like to have in order to fulfill that mission. So we said the Ilsley Public Library will be a welcoming, accessible, and safe community hub with flexibility and sustainability to enrich community members' lives now and into the future. So what do we mean by those things? Welcoming, accessible, safe community hub, flexibility, sustainability. I want to take just a minute to spell those out in a little bit greater detail. We hope that this is a vision that you can get behind and agree with. And let's look first at the issue of welcoming. What do we mean when we say welcoming? We would love it if when people first walked into the library, they got the impression that this is a really comfortable, welcoming place to be, and that someone would be able to greet them. And as Jim just pointed out, the librarians can't actually see who's coming into the building on the side. That's a bit of a safety issue as well. But if you think about what happens when you do walk in the side entrance, which is in fact the way that most people do come into the library, the first thing that you see going up the stairs is you run smack into a wall. The first thing that you see going down the stairs is you run into the restrooms. Then there's that rather awkward elevator to the left. So not really the most welcoming space. We think we can do better than that. But we also need the library to be more accessible. Imagine anyone coming into that side entrance with a stroller, a wheelchair. it's really difficult to navigate those stairs and that elevator. Practically any other public building in town, a school, the town offices, the fire station, the police station, there's no steps. We've kind of done away with the idea of steps in between the sidewalk and the main entrance to the building. So we'd love for it to be more accessible. And those front steps too, you can imagine what a barrier they present to people with mobility issues. Probably our most important concern is one of safety. Jim alluded earlier to the fact that we don't actually have a functioning HVAC system in the library. We have no ventilation at all. And in times of a pandemic, that really doesn't make it a very safe place to be. Likewise, we'd really like to be able to see what's going on. The librarians ought to be able to have, I don't want to say a commanding view, but if you think about the way that our children's room is set up, it's full of pillars and it's got peculiar shapes in it. And it's absolutely impossible for the librarians to keep an eye on the children. You know, we don't need to watch them every single second, but if you think of the way that a classroom is set up, it's set up in a way that we have a clear sense of what's actually happening in the building. Now, the way in which we think about libraries has changed over the years. We no longer think of a library simply as a repository for books and information. We don't just go to the library to grab a book and check it out and go home. Well, of course, that's still a function that we have, but increasingly people go to the library to gather together with other people. I'm sure many of you have been to meetings in the community meeting room. There are often smaller clubs that meet. The upstairs rooms are used sometimes for people who are working remotely. I had one community member say to me, you know, I really think what we need is not so much a library, but a community center, which happens to have a library attached to it. So we want to be able to create spaces which are more conducive to being a community hub. When we think about the future of libraries, you know, if this library is 100 years old, we think 100 years down the road, maybe that's too far. We think 50 years, 25 years, what are libraries going to look like? Will they still be full of shelves of books, or will they be quite different spaces? We think about how technology has changed over the past 10 years, 20 years. We don't really know what the future is going to bring. And because of that, we'd really like to create a space which is flexible and which can easily be changed or shifted should the needs of the community change over the course of time. And finally, we want a building that's sustainable. We all know the importance of caring for the environment. We know our concerns about global warming. We want to make sure that we have a green building, a building that makes good use of our energy resources, of water resources, that's built in a careful and thoughtful kind of way. And not just built that way, but that it can be maintained in a sustainable way as well. I won't go into the nightmare about how many light bulbs, different types of light bulbs have to be changed in the building, but let's just say it's a very large number. So that's our vision for what we'd love to see in the future of the library. We want the library to be welcoming, accessible, safe, community hub with flexibility and sustainability to enrich community members' lives now and into the future. Jim, am I turning it back to you at this point, or am I going on?
I believe you are, Joe. So
okay, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. So those are the kind of, you know, the broad goals that are guiding our decision making here. Let's look at what you're asking for. And you know, Dana arrived as our library director in 2017 and did a smart thing right off the bat, went on a listening tour to get to know the community and to understand how the library was being used, what folks would like to see in the library. And so there's been a lot of conversations that have taken place, surveys, focus groups over the last few years. in which, as the title says up here, we've asked you what you'd like to see, what you need in your public library. So let's look at some of those things together, and then we'll look following that at how the project team has responded to your request for new features in the library. So first, became very clear to me when I was working on the downtown construction project that there are very few public meeting spaces in Middlebury. And so one of the things we have heard time and again, and you saw the number of community groups that are meeting in the library. There are probably many more that would like to meet in the library. You're asking us for, modern meeting rooms, more than one, sized to the types of groups that would want to come to the library for their events. So that's high on the list. Next up, we have something that's kind of near and dear to many of us, I think, and that's our children. And the library, I think, could be a much better place, a much healthier place, a safer place for our kids, and in a more kind of engaging and expansive area for our children to learn and interact with one another. Teens, this is kind of a forgotten demographic in some respects. That 13 to 17-year-old age group when you're kind of transitioning from kids to adults. And wouldn't it be wonderful if the teens had a dedicated space in the library? Dana will talk to you about what services we already provide for tweens and teens, but we were going to imagine a new space for them as well. Digital Media Lab. This goes back to MCTV, our community television, and the project that Kurt Broderson runs, a Digital Media Lab, which has gotten really good play with kids who are learning to use the technology for all kinds of interesting and creative ways. Safe family-oriented bathrooms. Well, we touched on that earlier, but in a public building like ours, that's a must-have, I think. Let's move to the next, so clear signage is important in any library. Those of us who know Ilsley well know more or less how to get to where we need to go. But I think, in general, we could probably do a better job of improving our signage and providing kind of easier and intuitive access to where all the resources of the library are located. Quiet study and reading areas. This is really important, I think. So many people come in, check out a book, and leave. And I think it would be a real advantage, and people have asked us for this, to have quieter areas where you could go to read, where you could go to study, where you could do remote learning, where you could attend a remote meeting. And so that comes down to quiet study areas and better noise proofing. Improved outdoor space. This was really interesting to me. I guess, I have to confess, I've never given a lot of thought to the outdoor space behind Ilsley, but it's clear that a lot of people have and really value that space. And I think during the pandemic, we came to realize the value, even in Vermont here, and with our long winters, of outdoor programming. And so, we've had a lot of requests to kind of improve our outdoor space and to have more outdoor programming. And finally, downtown. Having spent 6 years working downtown, I understand the importance of a vital downtown. And Middlebury, I think, has recovered nicely from our 4 consecutive years of construction. We've got a brand new downtown landscape there that has attracted folks in. And I think that it's critical to our town to maintain the vitality of our downtown. And we've heard that from many of you, the importance of Ilsley remaining downtown and remain a vibrant center of our community. So we've taken all this into account. So we've got a charter to guide our decision making. We've got many requests from what you'd like to see in a library. And so we got to work. And the first step here was for Dana and her team to go through an extensive process of imagining what the library needed. And not just imagining that, but based on the day-to-day operations of the library staff and library patrons and how they use it. And so there's been a months-long detailed analysis and review of what the library needs are, kind of area by area.
Oops.
As I mentioned before, the plan that Dana is going to share with you in a minute here is really based on your needs, kind of filtered through those of the professional library staff. And we also have spent a lot of time looking at what other libraries are doing across the country. And that's been a really good kind of yardstick against which to measure our own ideas. Some of those are close to home. We've traveled to the Pearson Library in Shelburne, and we've been up to South Burlington's brand new library, down to Manchester. And we've also, in our regular meetings, looked at libraries around the country, and some of those photos you've seen already, so that we understand what's best practice around the country. Now, inevitably, it comes down to what Middlebury needs. And so that's what we're really focusing on here today. And so as I hand it off to Dana, I just wanted to make this following point. And that over the last 10 to 12 years, we've seen tremendous investment in Middlebury by the town. We've got, starting with Cross Street Bridge, we've got a new police station, we've got a new fire station on Seymour Street, we have new town offices, we have a new rec center. Now it's the library's turn. And so I'm really pleased to be here today advocating for the future of our library along with you. And now Dana's going to take some time to do the imaginative, aspirational part of our program and look at what she and her team have come up with for future needs of the library. Dana?
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, so thinking about everything that the community told us they want and they need, and thinking about what we know, what we as library professionals know we need on the back end to have a high functioning library and community center, we realized that we need to add about 6,000 square feet to the current building. So right now we have 18,000 square feet. We really need 24,000 square feet to add everything that we're hearing that the community would like. So that 6,000 square feet will allow us to do a lot. The first thing it's going to let us do is double the space for youth services. So we would add an additional 3,000 square feet for youth services. The other thing it would allow us to do is add 2,500 square feet for public meeting rooms and programming space. Again, this is about doubling what we have currently available. And boy, we really have a need for it and a demand in this town. Booking the community meeting room or other small meeting spaces is a real challenge right now. And the final thing it will allow us to do, and Jim mentioned this earlier, is just expand and improve our comfortable seating areas and have better noise control and containment. A lot of people do come to the library to work remotely or to attend school remotely. Distance learning is becoming more popular. And for a lot of people, the library is just a sanctuary and they want to have a place where they can go and rest and read and enjoy quiet while still, being surrounded by their community. So moving on, how does this break down into actual spaces? I'm going to go through a number of new spaces we'd like to add and spaces we'd like to expand in the library. There's images throughout this presentation. You've already seen a bunch of them, and these are taken from libraries around the country that were recently renovated or expanded or built new. There's absolutely no designs attached to any of this yet. We don't have a vision for what any of these spaces would look like aesthetically. So just keep in mind when you're looking at these images that they're meant to be illustrative and inspirational, but we're not proposing that that's what these spaces actually look like. So one of the first spaces we'd like to add is a library activity room. This would be a space dedicated to library programs, and we don't have this right now. The majority of our programs right now take place in the community meeting room. There's a couple challenges there. One is that, as I mentioned, it's tough to book that space, even if you work at the library. So we do have a hard time fitting in all the programs we'd like to run. The other challenge of that space is that it's not specifically designed for programs that involve any kind of mess or noise or movement. A lot of children's programs and adult programs, for that matter, involve crafts, paint, cutting up little tiny pieces of paper, glitter, things like that that make a mess. We also offer cooking classes for adults. We'd like to offer more of those. So we really need a space that has easy to clean surfaces, easy access to a sink, lots of storage, things like that. And then a lot of children's programs also involve movement and noise. So we need a space that has good sound containment and will support these programs and allow us to expand our programming overall. So moving on, another space we would like to add is a teen room. We've heard time and time again that Middlebury really needs a dedicated space for teens at the library. This isn't something we currently have. What we do have is an incredible teen and tween librarian, Catherine La Liberté, and she has done a great job of working with Middlebury's teens and teens from the Addison County School District and designing fantastic programs for them. She works very closely with the Teen Center. And what we hear is that the teens wish they had a space that was their own here at Ilsley. Right now, all they really have here is what's essentially a closet filled with their books. So what we would like to add is a comfortable space that makes them feel welcome, where they know that they can go after school gets out, where they're going to feel respected and safe and like they're wanted, like they belong here, and where they can do homework, interact with their friends, and have a safe space to be after school. So next, we're going to talk about let's see if we can move on to the next slide, the kindergarten and pre-K area. So this is a space we would like to expand significantly. Those of you that use this space currently know that it's really cramped. It's down in the basement, doesn't have good sight lines. We'd like to double the space for this age group, which will allow us to do three things. The first is expand the collection. We would love to grow our collection for this age group, especially our picture book collection. We'd like to make the collection more accessible by having height appropriate shelving and shelving that's all face out, so that you're not looking at the spine of the book, you're looking at the cover, because that's how children pick books out at this age level. They base their selection on the cover illustrations. We want to make sure they can see that. And then we'd really like to expand our early learning play area. Some libraries call this a wiggle room, but it's essentially a large, open, carpeted area where the library's youngest users can get their wiggles out, they can crawl around, they can play with toys, they can read a book with a parent. We have a number of sensory exploration units currently and activity centers. If we had additional storage and space, we could grow that collection and swap those resources out more regularly, which will really make the library a more engaging place for this age group. The elementary and middle school areas would also be expanded significantly, and they'd be separated. These are distinct developmental age groups, and they need their own distinct spaces. Right now at Ilsley, those spaces are kind of crunched together, and they're too small. In addition to having space for the collection, which is what we have space for now, we'd like to add space so that there can be tables and comfortable seating, places to gather so that these age groups can have peer-to-peer engagement, hang out after school, do homework, read books, things like that. We would also like to expand our community meeting room. You've heard many times in this presentation already what a well-used resource this is, but the truth is it could be larger and it could be better designed for our purposes. Right now it seats about 75 people, but for our larger programs, probably maybe once or twice a month, we have programs that far exceed that and we have to turn people away. So we'd love to be able to fit 100 people into that space. And this is not just about library programs. This is really about preserving our democratic tradition here in Middlebury and making sure we have a space that's large enough to accommodate those groups of citizens so that they can come together and engage each other. Our current community meeting room is not set up well to deal with changing technology. We don't have enough outlets. We don't have enough power. We'd like to have higher ceilings so that we can screen films. We have a really active film club that meets down there regularly. So there's a lot of improvements we could make. We need additional storage, and we'd like this space to be even better utilized in the future. Some other spaces we'd like to add are safe public restrooms, ideally multi-stall, a family restroom, which we don't currently have, and a lactation room, which we don't currently have. these might not be the most exciting new spaces that we talked about today, but we included them here because as Jim mentioned earlier, they're absolutely essential, and we don't have them right now. These are spaces that contemporary municipal buildings need to have, and these are really spaces that thriving downtowns need to have available to people. So we would like to add these facilities. Moving on, we'd like to add a new space, a conference room. The idea here is that we have a huge amount of interest from the community for smaller meeting spaces. So we have a large number of groups, maybe 6 to 10 people that need to have small meetings. Increasingly, they like to have hybrid meetings, so that remote element comes into it. And right now we accommodate these groups for the most part in our community meeting room, which is fine, except for the fact that it's not the highest and best use for that space. We'd rather reserve that space for the larger programs. It's really tough when someone comes and says, you know, I'd like to have a meeting for 30 people, or I'd like to do a yoga class at the library, and I think we're going to have 40 people attend. And we say, oh, well, sorry, we have a group meeting, a 5-person group meeting taking place at that time, so we can't do it. So we'd love to have 2 spaces so that those 2 separate kinds of meetings can take place concurrently. And we'd also like to have a space that's better set up to support small groups and hybrid meetings, technology, a comfortable setup, things like that.
Dana, are you envisioning a glassed-in meeting room surrounded by steel like the one in this photo?
Thank you for pointing that out, Joe. No, I'm not. As I mentioned earlier, these photos are meant to be illustrative, and it was tricky for me to find an exciting picture of a small conference room at a recently renovated library. So I'm certainly not proposing that this space be a glass cube plunked down in the middle of our beautiful historic building. It's a lot of steel and glass for my taste, but it's the right number of people, and you can see there's whiteboards in the background, and I'm going to guess that table is powered and that there's a space integrated and built in for an owl to hold hybrid meetings. The last space we'd like to add is a community living room. And this comes out of a lot of feedback I've gotten from the community that the library for many is the community center, and they want it to have a feeling of a hearth, like a warm place where everyone belongs, where we can come together and gather. So this is a picture from the Pearson Library right down the road in Shelburne, and they actually have a fireplace. Again, I'm not proposing that we have an actual fireplace, but it's a space that would evoke that feeling of comfort and safety and coming together. So this would be a space that could be booked by groups again. Think groups that require a less formal setting than a conference room. So a book group, or maybe a board doing a full day retreat where you don't want to be in an uncomfortable chair the whole day. But when it's not being booked, it would be open and available to library users to wander in, work on a puzzle. If you bump into a friend at the library, which I think everyone has had that experience, this would be the place that you could go and sit down and have a nice chat. So I think, unless I'm wrong, I think that wraps up the new and expanded spaces. And moving on, I think we're going to start moving into the portion of the event where we seek your input.
That's right. And we just wanted to sort of wrap up this presentation by pointing out that what we're really trying to do is to take in the feedback that we have received and to incorporate that into our ideas for a future building. And just to emphasize that at this point, there's no decisions have been made about design. We're really not thinking, what is it exactly going to look like? What is the layout precisely going to be? How exactly are we actually going to expand or renovate or otherwise come up with a new Ilsley Public Library? But we are interested in your thoughts and what you think. And so earlier in the presentation, I raised these questions for you, and I'm going to ask you in just a minute if you'll respond to them. But first, I did want to just address a few things that had come up in the chat during that part of the presentation. And Dana, I wondered if you could address Carol's had a question. She asked, how would Space for Teens coordinate with the teen center at the rec park?
Let me unmute myself. That's a great question. So we work closely with the Teen Center. We haven't taken this presentation to them yet to get feedback, but the library is open for hours beyond what the Teen Center is open for. So it would presumably be complementing and expanding on that existing resource. I don't know if that answers your question, Carol. Feel free to unmute and let me know if you meant something else by that. We will be going to the teens, by the way, to get feedback from them and the teen center once we get to the actual part where we're figuring out what do we want this space to really look like and what's most important to have in a space for teens.
Thanks, Dana. Jim, I wonder if you might want to respond to Al Perry's comment that came up earlier. He said he thinks the top priority is repair and save the existing building, fix the problems without further delay. The heating, the ventilation, the air circulation, and the foundation leaks. Let's just get on with it and fix those problems. What do you think?
Sure. So, well, that's a very practical approach to some of the infrastructure issues that we talked about. And it may be that time will run against us and we'll need to address some of those things. But I think, what we have here is an opportunity. And whenever time you run into a set of problems like this, you look at the other side of it. What's the opportunity? And the opportunity here is not just to address those infrastructure issues, but to take the time to imagine in addressing those infrastructure issues, how could you, create a library that's going to better meet community needs? And so it's a little bit of give and take on those issues. And we will soon be coming back to you with a plan for how we are going to address those issues and initiate some of the exciting changes that Dana's been talking about.
Great, thanks, Jim. Catherine points out that my voice is very loud and Dana's is lower. Can we make Dana's voice louder? Jim is at a good level. I think at this point in the meeting, Catherine, I'll just try to not speak so loudly and Dana will try to speak up a little bit. And hopefully that will work for everybody. But at this point, really, for those of you who are present, we're interested in your thoughts, in your feedback. What looks interesting to you? What's missing? What would you most like to see in the library? We'd love it if you would, just type your thoughts in the chat. We're really interested in your impressions of these possibilities. Ross is noting that there's might be an opportunity with COVID ARPA funding for rehabilitating the building. And Carol talked about wanting not to have to go upstairs. Yeah. To enter on a sort of enter at a level thing, I think is an ideal for us. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've talked a lot about how to enter the library at grade, so to speak. So you're coming in right off the street. Dana made the point in one of our other presentations, or perhaps Joe did, that all of our other public buildings, schools, town offices, you walk straight in from the sidewalk, right? And so that I mentioned earlier before about the front steps there and the challenges that and the side entrance face us with. And so certainly part of our plan is to have a direct entrance to the library from the sidewalk.
Hi, my name is Liza Sakeli, and I'm a community member, and I'm a parent of a preschool age child, and I work at the College Arts Center. So I'm a fellow administrator of a public building. And I, first of all, just want to thank everybody who's on this committee and leadership for, I imagine, to even get to this point where you're saying, oh, we don't have any, drawings, but even just to gather this much information is yeoman's work. So please accept my sincere thanks for even getting us this far. I think what you're proposing is super exciting. I can't wait to bring my family into this new museum that we're envisioning. My concern on the flip side of that coin is that trying to be everything to everyone, I'm sure this has crossed your minds already, but trying to be everything is going to be such a big challenge, right? Both financially and space wise. You've got this historic building, as somebody already noticed or noted. And in some ways, you don't want to lose that history, but at the same time, the history precludes some people from walking in the front door. And you're right in the middle of town, which is great, except that there's not really much space to grow unless you kind of start encroaching or building into the landscape or going up. So you've got a lot of challenges. So Ruth started to mention this, but figuring out what efforts can be collaborative, what resources exist in our community that we could draw from, so that you can prioritize the gaps. I think about, how proximate you are to the town hall, which is amazing. And it's kind of like in hindsight, it's like, it's too bad we couldn't have thought about, having a passageway between the two I'm sure someone's thought of this already, but a passageway between the two spaces, and we couldn't have bathrooms that serve both organizations, so that it's easier. The teen center. What if the teen center operated a satellite location out of the library rather than having this back and forth? You've got new public space, not far from you in the public park. Like, is there a way that the library could kind of extend its front lawn onto the park that's across from, where the town gym used to be? Lots of questions, but mostly about what resources are out there in our community that we could help bring into the fold, so that you are not stretched trying to think about how you squeeze absolutely everything into your space and maybe sacrifice the functionality of any of the spaces to do exactly what they need.
Thanks, Liza. We appreciate those thoughts, and especially the thanks that you conveyed. And I should mention that also here on the call, we have with us four other members of our Ilsley 100 project team, including Dan Brown, Judith Harris, Barbara Doyle-Wilch, and Ken Perrine, and also Steve Green, who's a member of our Ilsley Public Library Board of Trustees. Also, Catherine Nichols, a past president of the Ilsley Board, and Ann Taylor from the Friends, and perhaps some others as well. So it does take a village, Liza, and thanks for recognizing the work that has gone into things. Well, we don't want to keep you here all day. Let me just respond briefly to a few of the comments in the chat, and then share with you a little bit about where we think things are going on from here. Ann pointed out that it would be sure nice if the stacks were quieter, so that you could browse for books in a place where it's not really too noisy. Priscilla had a great question. She said, when you visited other libraries, what mistakes did they make? Did you learn from them? Great question, Priscilla. And I would say the most insightful visit we had along those lines is usually if you go to visit a library, sort of delegation from another library, you get the tour from the library director. But we went to Manchester, where they were between directors. So we got the tour not from the library director, but from the facilities manager, who's the person who has to fix everything that goes wrong. And she told us all of the mistakes that they made that we should not make. It was really useful. Don't go in for those fancy faucets that turn on when you stick your hands underneath them. Stick with the good old faucets like that. So yeah. So thanks to everybody for these fabulous comments, and for your participation here. The idea of partnerships, we think, is a very interesting one. How can we partner with other organizations in town? Might there be possibilities there for how we make use of the space? That's very interesting as well. And Lily points out technology. Yeah, what's going to happen in the future as far as technology? Liza asks a great question. What's the best email for us to send any other thoughts? And Dana, maybe you'd put your email there in the in the chat for everybody to see. If you do have further thoughts or ideas to share with us, we would love to have them. And probably the best thing to do is to send those ideas to Dana, and she will share them with the project team. So you're probably asking, So what's happening next? What are the next steps? We have this vision. We have some preliminary plans for what we'd like to see. And you may have noticed that we've been trying very hard not to get too pinned down into some of the details of the library. That's because we have a really important decision to make before we start doing that. And that is, if we're going to renovate, if we're going to expand, how exactly are we going to go about doing that? It's really difficult to engage the services of professional designers or architects if we can't give them a pretty clear idea of what it is that we want. So the Ilsley 100 project team has so far identified about 4 possible ways in which we could try to work to fulfill this vision. So the first one is this is kind of Al Perry's idea. Let's just fix the problems, for crying out loud. Okay, let's go in there. Let's get a functioning elevator. Let's get bathrooms that work. Let's have a functioning a heating and ventilation system. We could redo the carpets, maybe move a few things around. This is probably going to be our least expensive option. And we know that taxpayers in Middlebury are concerned about how much things cost. So we're looking into this as a possibility. A second possibility would be to say, well, what if we renovated and expanded? And the way we've been thinking about this would be to say, what if we took that rather awkward addition that's close to the town offices, and we took that off? And what if we took that more contemporary addition that was put on in 1988, and we took that off because it's a very, very inflexible space, and we've got leaks kind of coming through there. And we built a new structure onto the existing 1924 building, so that we expanded by kind of adding on to the older building. So that's the second option. Other people have said to us, look, you say that the issue is space and you don't have enough space. Hey, there's lots of available space in the downtown area. How about the Ben Franklin store? That option has come up and been suggested over and over again. What if we had a kind of an annex? So we're looking into that as a possibility as well. And I should say that when I say looking into these, we've been looking at pros and cons. We've been considering the extent to which they would fulfill the mission. We're coming to you for some feedback, and we're going to ask for more feedback in the new year. And we're also trying to get a sense of about how much each of these options would cost. The fourth option is probably the most dramatic possibility. So the idea there is to say, working with a 100-year-old building, that presents all kinds of problems, doesn't it? You've got old walls, you've got old wiring, you've got old plumbing, you have low ceilings. What if you built an entirely new building? Well, where the heck could you find space in downtown Middlebury to do that? Hey, there's a big parking lot right out in back of the library. But we don't want to take away the parking. What if we built a parking garage, maybe about a 2-level parking garage, and then we had like a 2-story library on top of that? That'd be a very interesting idea. Probably be very expensive to do that. What if we could find a partner who might build something else on top of the library, say apartments or something like that, and we could share the costs and so on. So there's well, let's just say there are a lot of pros and cons to all of these different ideas, and we know that people are going to have strong feelings about them. So as we continue to gather information on our end, what our hope to do is to come back to you with some more public meetings early in the new year with more details about these 4 possibilities to get your thinking on the pros and cons and to get some more feedback from you. And that's kind of the plan ahead. So if you would like to keep in touch with what's going on, if you go to our website, which is www.ilsleypubliclibrary.org, the first thing that you'll see right across the top is this red bar that says learn more about plans for the library's facilities and the Ilsley 100 project team. If you click on that, it'll take you to Jim Gish's blog. You may remember that Jim kept an ongoing blog during the bridge tunnel project, and he started doing that as well for our project. And if you're not already getting that, or you're not on the town's email list, you can sign up to get that, and you can read the back issues there as well. If you'd like more detail, if you go to, again, the library's website, you click on the About Us bar, you go down to the bottom and click on the Ilsley 100 project team. That'll take you to our page. It has some of the documents we've been working from. It has our reports to the select board. It will have a copy of these slides if you'd like to go back and review them. And we'll also put a link to a recording of this Zoom meeting if you'd like others to see it who have not been able to do that. If you're a techie person and you're into QR codes, if you point your phone at this bar, that'll take you straight to Jim's blog as well. So we want to thank you all very much for coming. I think probably at this point Dana is gonna stop the recording.